It's Norma Hatfield's birthday on Wednesday. Yeah, it's good that you keep having them. That's the trick. Happy birthday. Then tonight, tonight's sometimes one of my favorite times because I hear a couple stories that I knew nothing about, and people share how God had blessed them and they're thankful. I really want to encourage you to plan to come and to share with us. To be thinking about everyone here thinking about what God has blessed you with this year, and thank God for it. It's always a treat to me to hear a couple of those stories. So, and sometimes they're a little bit tear-jerkers. Things don't go exactly the way you want them to go, but you see at the end how God worked out and did some special things for you and made it good. Okay? So we'd like to make sure you come 6 o'clock. Be here. We'd love to have you. Okay. Well, we had a good men's retreat. And we had a great time. We had just some good spiritual time with some of the guys. We want to share some things with you that happened then and that we're talking about. We're in the book of Nehemiah, and we're here for a purpose. We've been praying, and I've prayed for probably 10 years on something we're going to share today. And with the elders and deacons that know about it, we've been praying for a couple years about part of it, and then a long time on another part of it. And we're just seeing God's hand move, and we want to share that with you. But we're in Nehemiah because Nehemiah is a lot about what's happening in our church. Chapter 1. Chapter 1, here Nehemiah finds out that the gates of Jerusalem are still burned. The people are under distress. Things are just going bad. They're being ridiculed and mocked. And he starts weeping, and he turns it over to God. When we have events in our life, that's what we need to do. We need to learn how to turn it over to God, and it's so awesome. But I've told this over and over every week, and it's almost going to be, not so exciting when we actually get to the chapter. But, what they didn't do in 70 years happened in 52 days. So it takes somebody. It takes somebody. And there's some steps here. One of them is found in 2 Chronicles 7:14. Let's just show that again. Such an important verse in the Bible. Because actually, if you notice this verse, and after that, when a king or the nation turned to God, they practiced this verse. And they claimed the promise in this verse. And you'll catch that as you read, and if you're careful. So, the if is actually, you notice this is the sentence starts in a previous verse, so the if is actually supplied there. And if my people who are called by my name humble themselves and pray and seek my face and turn from their wicked ways, then I will hear from heaven, will forgive their sin, and will heal their land. To be heard by God, sometimes you really have to just repent and just come back to Him. Sometimes it's a humbling experience. You have to have a meeting with Jesus. And that sometimes is our first step to really getting things right and being honest with it. I was talking to someone yesterday who just won't get honest with their situation. And, it's always but. You know what I mean? Just always a but there, So they just don't quite get it right. So first of all, we need to do that. So humble ourselves and pray and seek seek God's face. So what we're calling for in January, and the women have done this for several years. Last year or two, some of the men joined them, and we talked about it. But this year, we want to call the whole church to a fast in January. And, we'll talk more about that, but you can fast from different things. But, fasting is really about food. And I know that hurts, doesn't it? Yeah. That hurts. But it's good for us, and spiritually, it's a way of humbling ourselves and turning to God and looking for Him to do something. And we want to launch out then in February and some things. But so that's first of all. Then chapter 2. Chapter 2, we talked about a plan. Remember, we used the word ram. And Nehemiah began to develop his plan. And so if you're going to do anything for God and you're going to do anything that's worthwhile and it's important, you need to make a plan. You need to set some goals. And your plan has to be this. RAM. R stands for reasonable, A for action steps, and M for measurable. So we've talked about this and reviewed it several times, but R, reasonable. You know, again, I want to point out what I did when I preached that if you remember when Henry hit Texas, they said one of the problems was the average American doesn't have $500 in savings. And it created a huge problem. Friends, you got to get there. You got to save. And so you could say, okay, well, I'm going to save $500 next month. Well, that's probably not reasonable unless you make a lot of money. But you can say, I'm going to save $10 a week. This is action steps. This is reasonable, and it's measurable. So what it is that reasonable is at $10 a week for a year. You're going to have $500. It's action steps. So this, I get my check and I put it in an account. And measurable, at the end of a month, I can say I have $40. Now, if you cheat and you take your babe out to dinner and it costs $40, then you don't have it. So no cheating. Okay? So I'm just using this again because I'm very concerned sometimes people just don't get it. And they don't get prepared for things that are going to happen. But if you have a plan, if you have a dream, if you have a vision, remember, a vision without a plan is just a dream. You're just dreaming. You need to put some feet to it. Now, chapter 3. No, I think we're still in chapter 2. There's another message. And it's this message that we talked about a couple weeks ago. Everybody, somebody in God's body. Everybody's something special. We want to move people from the pews to ministry. You know, there's nothing in the Bible to say have padded pews. And there's nothing in the Bible that says we're supposed to do church sometimes the way we do it and all programs and all that. Listen, some of this is just out of convenience in that, and it's nice to have padded pews, I know, but that's not where we're supposed to be in the church. That is not the church. When we say we're going down to the church, we understand now with our vernacular, we say, well, that means this building. But that's not the church of Christ. The church of Christ is really made up of what? People. It's made up of people. Matter of fact, there is not a text in the Bible that you could go to and say, well, God said, now, Paul, you're going out and start churches. You find some people, get some people saved, start discipling them, and build a big church. But that is the American mindset, right? Matter of fact, it's pretty much followed around the world. That's what it is. You go to Europe, and what do they have? Big churches. Steeples, right? Okay, you go to any other country, and that's what they have. They say, this is a church. You go to church. We heard the church, and they're talking about, this building. That's not the church. You're the church. True believers are the church. And everybody is a somebody in God's body. Everyone has his place. Have you ever seen a football team and they're playing on the field, but they made a mistake and somebody doesn't show up? They don't go out to the play? And you all of a sudden see somebody getting yelled at and running out with his helmet, trying to quick put his helmet on and running out and just jumping in and putting his chin strap on? Well, whether you get there on time or late, at least get there. But put your chin strap on. Get buckled up. And get ready for action. Because we want to have action. We're going to share a couple things how you can easily get involved. And we want to move from being the typical church. And since I was in Bible college, I've heard this quote over and over, that the average church only has between 10 and 20% of people serving or being involved in the church. And we're not going to remove the pews, but we got to move us from the pews to the ministry. Yes. And so everybody can say, I have an active part in my church. Amen. And that's important, and you're supposed to be that way. And what gets me is that, every football team knows that. You got to have somebody hike the ball. You got to have a quarterback. You got to have somebody who runs. You got to have somebody who receives. You got to have a defense. All the positions, you start going over them. And we understand that in baseball, how terrible it would be the shortstop not to show up or lay down on the job. Hey, I'm going to take this inning off. And so it doesn't work, does it? It doesn't work in the military. It doesn't work in businesses. Doesn't work in an assembly line. So we need that. So that's everybody is a somebody. You have a place in the body of Christ. God has designed it. Let me share it another way. You ever put puzzles together? Have you ever put puzzles together? Okay. You do the border, you start getting pieces, and you start looking, and it seems like a piece is missing, right? You know what's really irritating? When there is a piece missing. Right? You start looking around, the cat jumped up on the thing or something and knocked some pieces off, and it's under the couch or something like that. And your big son's sleeping on the couch. Can't get to it, but you know what I'm talking about? It's missing. Have you ever had somebody cheat and hide a piece? Yeah, you have, George? Karen? Yeah? They hide it because they want to be the last one to put the last piece in. So they hide one piece. That's dirty. That is bad. You're bad if you do that. Okay? So equal opportunity here, you know. So if you have pieces missing in your puzzle and you put them together and you start looking for them, it makes the whole thing wrecked, right? You have to have every piece. And you have to have, really the body of Christ is so dysfunctional today, just like they say a dysfunctional family. Well, the family of God has become dysfunctional because some of our pieces, some of our families are missing or they're not working. And they don't even know what they can do. Well, listen, over 50 times in the New Testament, the Bible has what's called the one another's. Love one another, help one another, pray for one another, serve one another. Okay, you get it? There's 50. They say there's 57. Now, I haven't counted them, but I just be safe say there's over 50. And with that, that's how you start to get involved. Encourage one another. And so you need to fulfill the one another's in the Bible. My question to you, are you? Because as soon as you do and you take that seriously, that moves you from the pew to the ministry. Because you're going to have to take an active step of getting involved in other people's lives. And really, it's not about the building. It's about people. And so we need to get actively involved in people's life. And we want to move it. Now, in chapter 2, verse 17 and 18, something happens. Let's do that. 17, 18. Isn't that where it is? I think I had 17 first. Isn't it 17 and 18? Oh, he was trying to trick me. Then I said to them, you see the bad situation we're in, that Jerusalem is desolate, its gates are burned by fire. Come, let us rebuild the wall of Jerusalem so that we will no longer be a reproach. Stop there for a second. Stop there. He begins to share the vision with the people in Jerusalem. 70 years they've let this thing go. I mean, I'm amazed. You know, I can just hear the Jewish wives saying to their husbands, dear, at least take care of the gate. You know, at least fix that hole in the wall. People are getting through there at nights. It's bothering me. You know, they just didn't do it. 70 years. You know, when you have something broken, you notice it at first, and then after a couple days, you don't notice it as much. And a couple months later, you hardly even notice it. And a year later, you're used to it. And that's just the way it is. It's in concrete now. I mean, that happens, right? And it's the way we pile up things in our garages. Anytime we clean the garage, it gets filled up really quick. And you clean up something, man, it just happens again. Okay, well, he casts the vision here. He says, guys, this is the plan. We're going to get to work. We're going to get this thing done. And he's had God just lead in this and that, and he's prayed and he's fasted, and he's got the blessing of authority above him, the king. And so now they're casting the vision, and he's telling the people, you know, we've been mocked. You know, this is our beloved city, and it's messed up, and we need to fix things. Let's do it. Verse 18. I told them how the hand of my God had been favorable to me, and also about the king's words which he had spoken to me. And he just blessed them. He just let them, you can go to the forest and get all the wood you need. Yeah, you tell these other people in the kingdom to help you. And the king gave them authority. You go back to chapter 1. Then they said, well, let us arise and build. So they put their hands to the good work. So that's they, and we remember what we saw in chapter 3 is that everybody took a part of the wall, and they started building, and they just, family after family, and this family, and then this family, and this family, and this family, it says. And the families got together, and they took care of the business. And that's, again, us. Everybody is somebody in God's body. That's us joining in and getting the work done. Whatever job you have to do, if it's a big task, even more important, you have to plan. You have to cast the vision. You have to get people involved. You have to join hands and get the work done. Okay, so we know that. That's a must. And so you need to know what needs to be done. Now, for us in the New Testament, so everything you're doing in life, if you place you work, they're going to have order. They're going to have a plan. And you've got to follow that plan to get it done. Now, what's the New Testament? Jesus gave it to us. In Matthew chapter 28, 19 and 20, go therefore and make disciples of all the nations, baptizing them in the name of the Father and the Son and the Holy Spirit, teaching them to observe all that I commanded you, and lo, I am with you always, even to the end of the age. The Great Commission, this is known as the Great Commission, is that we make disciples. A disciple is a learner, has the idea of being then a learner who follows Jesus Christ. How long does it take to make a disciple? This is a trap. This is a trick. How long does it take to make a disciple? What do you have to teach them to make them a disciple? Okay. I just want you to think. How do you do it? How does the Scripture say you do it? What is supposed to be done? Well, there's a little thing, and I didn't give you the verses for this, but Acts chapter 14, Paul is on a missionary journey. And he's going along, and he's going from town to town, and really, he's not there that long. Remember what a disciple is? A disciple is a follower. First of all, methetes means a learner. But he then is a learner who's going to follow and obey what, if he was a disciple of Plato, he's going to sit under him, learn that, and follow him. Follow those teachings. So how long does it say for you to make that? Because it really begins with commitment. Now, I didn't say how long does it take you to be a mature disciple. Because Paul says in Philippians chapter 3, he says this, I haven't made it yet. He says, I've learned how to go do this and this and this, but I haven't made it yet. But I'm forgetting the things that are behind, and I'm reaching forward to the things that are ahead. I press on toward the goal for the prize of the upward call of God in Christ Jesus. So he says, it hasn't happened yet that I'm fully trained, fully mature. But Paul was an apostle. He was starting churches everywhere. So what does it take? What happens? You see, Acts chapter 14, 21, he was there. I think the text lends that he was probably there only a couple weeks. And he says this, and he had made many disciples there. Now, how can you do that in a couple weeks? That's sure different than our thinking today, isn't it? Let me tell you what the issue is. It's for people really making a decision. I'm going to follow Christ. I'm all in. For a person, and I'm not saying that that makes them a mature disciple. I'm just saying they made the decision, I now am going to have my mind renewed. I now know what my life is about. You see, you could say, I could become an American citizen, and that doesn't mean that you're, doing everything that you're supposed to as an American citizen. But you can vote, you can do some things, right? So becoming a disciple really is something that happens between your ears probably and in your heart. And he's going out there and he's saying, hey, you want to be a disciple of Christ? Are you willing to follow him? Are you willing to learn from him? Are you willing to sit at his feet? Are you willing to accept the things that God tells you in your heart? Now, I think some people, like in 2 Timothy chapter 3, verse 7, they're ever learning and never able to come to the knowledge of the truth. I'm not talking about you learning and becoming fully mature yet. I'm just talking about you making that real decision like they did there. Okay, we'll build the wall. We're in. You can count on me and my family. We're going to jump in there and we're going to get our part of it done. So how about it? How many in here are real disciples of Christ? Matter of fact, you realize and you're willing to say he sets the rules. And I'm willing to follow him. He leads where we're supposed to go and I'm willing to go. Heard a missionary say, they talked about a story about being in India, and they took some water and they gave somebody a glass of water. They went in the Ganges River and took a big cup and went like this and said, here. He was thirsty. They did here. He said it was brown. And you offend the people if you don't. They were all doing it. And so he actually drank the water. And he said not only was it dirty, but there was chunks of stuff in it. And so he told us this. He says, where he leads me, I will follow. What he feeds me, I will swallow. Now that's gross. That's a committed missionary, right? I'm not so sure God asked you to be a committed missionary, but he asked you to be a committed disciple. I don't think he calls everyone to die for him, but he does call everyone to live for him. Catch that. Because I think it might be easier to die than it is to live. Just give up, right? But will you, and I'm just so impressed, and I catch that there in Acts, and I realize, it called his 12, the 12 men, the 12 disciples. Everybody follow this? It called him the 12 disciples when he began to minister to them. Right? Come on, talk to me. Correcto? Correcto mundo? Excuse me. So that was at the beginning. They weren't mature. Matter of fact, when Jesus died, they weren't mature yet. And so that's the beginning. For you to make that decision and really decide, hey, I am all in. I realize there's these people with their standards and the government with their standards and this group over here with their standards, but I, and this philosophy, Plato and Socrates and all the different philosophies then, different beliefs in God and that, but I believe in Jesus Christ and I am all in now. I'm going to learn from him. I'm going to follow him. I'm going to do what he said, and I'm in. Are you in? I was amazed when I caught that little thing there in Acts 14:21. Actually, I'm more amazed on verse 23 of something else. But hey, I'll tell you what. He went there and he made many disciples, probably a few weeks' time. He got people to sign on the dotted line. I think that's a big decision. I think we're really going to struggle with some things because that means we're going to have to change up here and change here. Right? It's tough. Have you done that? See, I think you can be a Christian and not actually even be a disciple I think you are finding that hard thing to really commit. It's kind of like marriage. I've heard some of these guys have been dating for 5 years. And they say, hey, let's get married. And I don't know if I'm ready. You think you can be in love and not get married? You can put off the wedding, right? Being a disciple is like the marriage ceremony is saying, I do, man, I'm in. I think salvation is the same way too, but I mean, man, you take that step, friend. So I want to tell you, this is the vision. This is what we're supposed to do. Now, the Bible doesn't really tell us how to do it. So it does tell us to teach the word. It does tell us to pray. It does tell us to practice. But it doesn't give us the 10 steps of being a disciple. It doesn't have even one book that lays out some type of pattern. Say, first teach them this, then some of these things, and make sure you take them through this book. And, there's nothing. Why? Because part of it lays on you, or lands on you. Part of it lands on you that you realize, I've made this commitment, I'm going to learn. I'm in. I'm going to listen. I'm going to be there. And so we cast the vision. And one of the things we realize that has to happen is we talked about it a year ago, had it at the men's retreat. It was all about becoming a disciple and being in a group that you say, we're going to be accountable to this group, we're going to grow in this group, we're going to build this ministry in this group. I want to tell you, it's like these small group home studies groups are like a discipleship group, but even more so, they need to function like a church. It's the church within the church. And that's where we begin to start sharing. Even with this group of people this morning, if I said, hey, anybody can share a testimony. Anybody can share a burden, a prayer request. Anybody can share a praise, something. We could be here for hours and hours and hours if everybody shared. I tell you what I've learned about Oscar, he could take up half the time. And he can raise his hand and say, I got one more thing. That's because he's got something happening in his life. I'm teasing him a little bit, but I know that of Oscar. I have testimonies, he'll give one, and then 5 minutes later he says, I got another one. In a small group, 10 to 25 people, something like that, man, you can share. You can encourage one another. See, the groups, we need to start functioning like a church in our small groups. They need to build up one another. They need to be there. Our small group that meets on Tuesday nights here, I was so impressed. Esther shared her grandson. Yeah, grandson Ray had he had a thing blow up on him in Afghanistan, and he had shrapnel coming out of his leg. It really was hurt. Came back here injured, and he was feeling a little better. And he one of those mechanical bulls. He got on it. And the guy said, hey, guys, watch this. He turned it up, and Ray went flying and landed on his head, broke his neck in 2 places. Ended up in the hospital. They put pins in and plates. I mean, he was in bad shape. And then, about a month later, 3 weeks later, something like that, his body began to reject all of that. They had to operate again. Now he's got scars down his neck here and the back. They had to go in both ways. And, his body's rejecting it. She calls our texts. She sends out one text. And I had counted that day what came in on my phone. I think there were 21 texts that went back. We're praying. How can we pray? Tell us more. The type back and forth. And everybody in that group being that family that's praying. Can you pray? Yeah. Can you encourage somebody that needs encouragement? Can you comfort somebody that needs comfort, has been hurt? Yeah, see, And so one thing we're going to do is we want to encourage you that we're going to build our small groups, but they're basically going to be churches, functioning as a church body, to minister to each other, to pray for one another, to encourage. Just how powerful that was. I don't know. Does Alina or Esther, how many are on that? 6, 7, 8 of us? 9? Like I said, 9 of us are on that. And man, in 25 minutes, 21 texts go out. You can have all these people praying for your grandson, praying for somebody that needs right here, right now. But we're going to do it as a church, as a corporate church body too. So we want our little groups to do that, our little churches to do that. We want our big ones because you can get involved. Some people say, I just can't do anything. You can pray. So you can sign up and you can get involved in this in your group that for a prayer. It's not just a prayer group. And so just imagine here, hopefully by February we'll have it ready to do. But just imagine somebody gets hurt and you need prayer right now. Somebody went to the hospital or whatever it is, and you put it and you're signed up on it. We just have to put out one text, and it will have 100 people that have signed up and can pray right now for that situation. Isn't that cool? You could belong to that, couldn't you? Well, I think all of us could, right? And so you can sign up and say, I want to put me on the prayer team to receive those texts. And then, you just, all of a sudden, you just get text, praying. All these people coming back saying, we're praying. And we'll tell people how to pray. You could also belong to one that you're willing to help. The Bible tells us we're to help one another, right? And so now, you can't help every time, but if somebody has a need and say, hey, we have something, we're trying to move something, we need a couple guys to come over and help us move it, or whatever it is. Let's just use that one. Then some people say, well, Saturday morning, can I get a couple people to help? Text it, and some people pop over there, take care of it. You can't do it every time, but if you're willing to help, you can be on the team. And so we're going to do that. We're talking about that. We're talking about having one that I call it a 911, because we have this happen and sometimes we don't know what to do. But we have somebody stranded on the freeway, their car broke down, and they need to be picked up or something, they need help or something needs to happen. And not everyone can do it every time, but all we have to do is one person in our body be able to do it one time, and just go down and pick them and say, yeah, I can quick scoot down there and pick them up and take them home. They're stuck in the store, and that would be a 911. So anytime our church body has a need like that, we have a 911 text go out to those people who say, text me. If I can, I'll do it. Right? Does that make sense? Yeah. We had a group of guys show up the other day, the helps part in that, and we were over here emptying the sea container. And I just mentioned to Justin here, and I said, yeah, we're going to be doing that the other day. He says, I'll come down and help. So you can't do it every time, but if you do it once, we know you're part of the team, right? And so you become part of the you become part of the team, and you can show up, you can be there. And so we're going to have another one. We're going to actually have a couple more, and I've been praying about coming up with them, but one's on giving. Somebody, all of a sudden we get calls, they need a couch. I don't carry couches in my back pocket. But sometimes somebody will have a couch. Fun. Does anybody have a couch they want to get rid of? Okay, right there. So we just got somebody who got rid of a couch and somebody who got a couch. And that happens. And so it would just be a giving text that maybe you want to be part of it. And if we can't, hey, we'll find an inexpensive one in a secondhand store and we'll buy it and give it to them, but you can be part of it then. You just remember this. You do not have to be the whole solution, just part of it. I want you to think about that because it becomes powerful. And just imagine, a text goes out. Now when we get it, right now we don't know what to do. If I don't have a couch to give and Dufos don't, or we talk to a couple, what do? Well, we say, well, if we hear one, we'll tell you about it. But now we can put it out to 100 families. And, if we don't, people, if we will put in $1, we can get used couches in some of these secondhand stores easily. Right? Does that sound like a plan? We're going to move everyone from the pew to the ministry. How many volunteer? Yeah. We all need to volunteer. All of us, just be part. Say, I'll be part of the body. That's what we're saying. I'll be part of being used. Well, part of our plan even gets bigger than that. And our vision is greater. And what it is that I have been burdened since before I started this church for children. I've been burdened. I used to go down in the streets of San Diego and witness before I was even in Bible college. I got saved, and I just started going down in the streets. Me and my buddy, and we just go down and share Christ with guys. And we start walking the streets, man, talking to people about Jesus. And I got in the Bible college, and we did it even more. And so I'm burdened about that. Before we started this church, I had a goal. That I said, in my lifetime, Lord, I want to start 2,000 churches. And we have started many churches. We've helped. We've gone overseas. We've done some things here and that. And we've helped people and given to people. But, I'm not anywhere near 2,000. But it's revived in my heart that I think we can hit it. Let me tell you how we can hit it. Let me tell you what's going to happen. Well, we are going to reach out, and we want to send, just imagine if you could go and be a missionary for 1 week. Now, when we go to be a missionary for 1 week, like to Ecuador, or we've gone to the Philippines and that, you go there and you minister to people. We're not sending people there. Maybe some will go there to help build a church, but we remember the church isn't the building. So if we go to really build them, we want to build them. We want to get people saved. And so imagine if our church could say, well, instead of costing, it usually costs about $2,500 to do that, we could say it's only going to cost you $1,000 because the church is going to pick up the other. And we're going to help you. Imagine these orphanages. I figured it out. And with our plan, we can get 500 orphans off the street and into orphanages, and we can pay for it. I found that we can start 100 churches a year and give them a couple years to grow and then start moving it. We can start 100 churches a year and pay for it. And our body here can be involved of going there and ministering and helping them and knowing what's happening in the orphanage. Now, can you imagine that? Can you imagine that kind of numbers? Well, how are we going to get there? Where does that money come from? Well, hold on to your horses. Because we're going to do something that God has led me on 100%. And I believe that we're going to probably be about the first ones to do it. We're going to sell our church. We're going to sell it. But I'm selling it to a school so we still can use it on Sunday morning. We just won't own the building. You'll be just like this. You'll come here and sit here, and you'll laugh at my cruddy jokes. You can raise your hand and get excited to go to Ecuador or the Philippines or India or wherever. You can be giving and contributing to some of the other things, but just imagine we won't have any of the building upkeep. We won't have any of the our gas and electric bill is about, is it average $3,000 a month, Ricky? A little bit under that? Under it? A little bit under it. But when it goes high, it's between 3 and 4, right? And it's low, it's about 2,000, 1,800. Now it's 2 to 3. Okay. Okay, so it's come down a little bit. But that's just our electricity bill. We won't have that anymore. We won't have the insurance on this, thousands and thousands of dollars. We won't have the gas and electricity I just said. We won't have all those type of things, to repair things, to do new parts of the building and that. We won't have. But we're making a deal that we still get to use the church like for service. We still get to use it one night a week. We still get to use it have some facilities like that. But we don't have the upkeep in that of the building. How much will we release from that? Between $8 and $10 million. It'll go into a foundation. And the foundation will be able to distribute, we'll be able to make probably $500,000 a year, and that money will go out to missions. And we're going to, instead of our deacons and people being invited to work parties, they're going to be invited to ministry parties. Amen. Instead of saying, well, we're just going to have to go down and paint. Oscar got a team. Didn't you get the team to paint this? And, we get the team to come down here and paint this. We get the team to come down here and work the sea container. We get the team to come down here and fix things and that. We have to paint the whole roof up there again. That'll take many man-hours to paint the ceiling. The roof. The other side. And we're going to have to do that. We won't have to do any of that anymore. We won't have to expend that and pay money for it. It won't be our bill. And but that money that's tied up into this is going to be able to be released into ministry around the world. Our church is going to be able to go to a world ministry. You know any other church that says they're supporting 500 orphans? Or they're starting hundreds of churches, and they can send out their people that feel led to go do this or that. It'll also give us money that we can hire people here in America and here in San Diego to minister. Because we're going to have to, deal with all this. And so this is a 3-year plan, so it's not set in concrete, but it's definitely the way to go. And I hope that we're an inspiration to other churches to do the same thing. There's not a verse you can show me that God said, Paul, or Pastor Dave, or Timothy, or all new pastors and that, go out, start a church, and build this big building worth, $10 million. No, but we're supposed to send our money and gifts to minister. Does that make sense to anybody? Yes. We'll have time to talk about it. You can, some of your hearts may be stopped 5 minutes ago. But I'm not worried about it one little bit because I'm still going to be able to preach right where I am today. That's our deal. Okay? And so we'll be able to park in the parking lot. We'll be able to come in here. And by the way, we won't have to fix the parking lot anymore. So we'll be able to have all of this, and it'll be able to have funds to minister and send people around the world. And so I figured it will take us about 20 years to hit 2,000 churches. But that's the goal. We have 3 years to try to restructure and do some things, but there's going to be some chores. One thing is that we have to be willing to be a real disciple. We have to have buy-in. Paul says, we went there and we made many disciples in this short period of time, and I'm thinking, how did he do that? But the 12 were called disciples immediately, so it's not the full process to bring to maturity, because some people don't even get there in a lifetime. They're on the slow growth program. But we need the people to realize and come to that time and they say, I'm ready to be involved in an exciting ministry that goes worldwide. I didn't get too many rights there. And I'm wanting to be involved in being able to do great things. So we'll still have our bathrooms. We'll still have this building. We'll still have a night a week to have meetings in and classes. We'll be able to have more classes. Matter of fact, I see on Sunday morning than we have now. And so, but it's going to take that we're going to become real disciples. We're going to have to buy in. We're going to encourage you to get involved as we begin to pray and find leadership in that, and fasting and praying in January, in somewhere beginning in February, we want to launch out into new groups. And we want to encourage you to be involved. We're going to have sign-up sheets. And just say, hey, I'm in, man. I don't know of any other church that has actually done what we're going to do, but I'm hoping it sparks other churches to say, why have 10 million? Why have 1 million? Why have 5 million in our building when we can still use it, turn it over to a Christian school? They use it Monday through Friday nights, sometimes Saturdays. Why can't we still use it on Sunday? Make sense? And we have probably billions of dollars sitting in American churches in real estate that's not even biblically that it's supposed to be there. You can't show me a verse that says that. Instead, what we're going to do is follow, I believe, the leading of God and create, I hope, a great movement that people can do this and release their people to ministry. And we'll be able to help more people here. We'll have the funds to help more. When we put money into the offering plates, realize between our gas and electric bill and our insurance and our mortgage bill and that, we're going $7,000, $8,000, $9,000 a month just to pay for those things. That'll all be gone. That'll all be able to go to ministry. Just think how many people that can help in that. And so, might be a shock, but it's, we haven't obviously done it yet. We'll be praying and having you talk with us and work through it. But we need your support, and I believe this has been something I've felt this way for 10 years and just been praying about it. And believe me, I'm praying for all of you here to be involved. Now I want to show you some verses, and we're going to close with this. Because anytime you start to do something for God, the devil's going to fight you. People are going to fight you. He'll use people. He'll use things that are a problem. And so it's going to happen. And that's just part of life. It's part of life that you're going to go through struggles, even without spiritual struggles. You're going to go through them because people are born and people die. People go out and they go to school and they have problems at school. They get jobs, they have problems at their work. They get jobs, they lose jobs. They need finances, their health issues that come up, all that. We have problems, but the difference between us and the lost person is we have God on our side. And we can call upon Him. And so that's what we need to learn to do, but we need to learn that there's always opposition. As we turn to Christ spiritually, I've had so many pastors tell me when they first went out to pastor, they had all these problems. They had marital problems, they had problems with their children, they had problems with the people they were trying to pastor, and it's just constant warfare. And so we kind of have that. We can expect that. And so we can expect it. I'm going to read a couple verses to you here in Nehemiah, but we're going to have problems. Acts chapter 20 says that we have problems from within and from without. People within the ministry and people on the outside. This one comes from the outside. Actually, and in chapter 3, there's a little one verse that tells you that the nobles did not support the work. All the families got involved, but some of the leadership there didn't. But let's read chapter 4, verse 1 and 3. Now it came about that when Sanballat heard, Sanballat and Tobiah were locals, not non-Jews. They were Canaanites. Now it came about that when Sanballat heard that we were rebuilding the wall, he became furious and very angry and mocked the Jews. Let's stop. When you start doing something for God, isn't it amazing that people get mad at you? You start going to church, you want to pray, you're at work and you want to say, hey, can I pray for you? And somebody gets mad at you that you wanted to pray. Have you ever had anything like that happen? Believe me, for me, I've had it happen a bunch of times. Gone to visit people, somebody asked me to go visit, and they're mad. Well, why do you have to bring up Christ? They're mad that we bring up Christ at Christmas time now. Right? Come on. That's true. They said, what are you trying to make this religious now? Hey, it has been since day one, pal. That's what it's been. And so, they fell off the turnip truck. So they're going to get mad. It's amazing. Why do they have to get mad that we want to rebuild the wall? Why do they get mad that we want a worldwide ministry? Why do they want to get mad? Hey, listen, sometimes people lose control. They're afraid of change or they lose control. And I think that's what's wrong with Sanballat here. He was going to lose control. He wasn't going to have it anymore. Verse 2. He spoke in the presence of his brothers and the wealthy men of Samaria and said, what are these feeble Jews doing? Are they going to restore it for themselves? Can they offer sacrifice? By the way, answers are all yes here, right? Can they restore it? Yeah, they can do it. Hey, can we do this thing, this venture that we believe God is leading on? Yeah, we can do it. By the way, we had a broker come in last summer, and we asked him, he was looking at another person buying it. He was kind of representing us, and they wanted him to come and estimate the value of this. And he said, how much did I want for it? And I said, well, at least $8 million. And, but it's somewhere between 8 and 10. And I do my homework on that. And so he comes in, he's going through, and he walked in those doors right here, and he came in here and saw our auditorium. He saw our kitchen, and he goes, oh, man, this is a problem. He looked at me, and he says, I can sell this by tomorrow. I have 8 different groups that would want this. And then he said, no, that's not right. I could sell it by this afternoon. So that's what we're setting on here. And when you said we are setting on $8 to $10 million to release the ministry around the world, boy, that's something. He spoke then in the presence of his brothers and the wealthy men of Samaria and said, what are these feeble Jews doing? Are they going to restore it for themselves? Yes. Can they offer sacrifices? Yes. Can they finish it in a day? Well, not any, but 52 days. 70 years they hadn't done anything, and in 52 days they did it. Can they revive the stones from the dusty rubble, even the burned ones? Yes. Yes, but people get critical. They said Charles Lindbergh could not fly over the ocean and get to Europe. They said the Golden Gate Bridge could not be built, but they did. They said we couldn't go to the moon, but we did. And they said it couldn't be done, and yet it's done. Many times they said to the Jews they couldn't do it. Read your Bible. They said they couldn't do it. They did it. You know why? For I can do all things through Christ, who strengthens me. Verse 3, last verse, at least in this text. Now, Tobiah and the Ammonite, remember Tobiah? They're all Canaanites, which was the area, and Tobiah was an Ammonite, was near him, and he said, even what they are building, if a fox should jump on it, he would break their stone wall down. Ha, ha, ha. They think they're cute and funny. Not so funny, not so funny. But they're ridiculing them. Now, we've gone late, and so I can't finish the whole message, but listen. We can expect anytime we do something for God, things will go bad. When you start trying to serve God as a Sunday school teacher, you're trying to get involved in a home group study that functions like a church that we're talking about, there's going to be adversaries. We had that adversary, the city, the county, when we had the Bible study that I had. And some of you in here actually sat in that Bible study. And know, I know the Yosefas, Joe and you Derwin and Carrie. So we had them try to shut it down just because we were Bible study. They were not happy. You're going to face that. But what do you expect to happen when you do something for God? We kind of expect blessing. That's what we're planning on. But there's no smooth text in the Bible. There's no smooth road. There's no easy does it. Instead, there's warfare. Anytime you attempt to do something great for God, there's going to be warfare. There's going to be problems. There's going to be difficulties. And that's where we rise up with God's help. And we do it. When we built this church, I look back now and see God's plan. If you would have asked me, Pastor, how can we raise $8 million, $10 million in the next 20 years and release it to ministry, I wouldn't have had a plan. I wouldn't have had a plan. Yeah, let's save $500,000 to $1 million a year. That's kind of reasonable. With 150, adults. No, that's not reasonable. We would have never done it. Your share would have been way, way too much. But God had it and built this up. We just think of what can be used for God. But there's, instead of easy street, instead of easy does it, easy goes it, smooth road, the Bible says you have conflict. As you try to raise your family, you'll have conflict. And the key is to stick close to Jesus and hang in there. He even gave you a parable that says, a wise man built his house upon the rock. It's found in Matthew chapter 7, starting in verse 24. Wise man built his house upon the rock, and when the storm came, the house stood. The foolish man built his house upon the sand. When the storm came, it washed it away, and he was gone. Who's on the rock and who's on the sand? The one who hears and does my sayings. Now I want you to think about that, because there's going to be storms in your life, Jesus is telling you. There's going to be problems, but you are going to stand. You're going to be there after it all crumbles. The others get washed away, things happen, but you'll still be there. There's so many verses. There's a spiritual warfare text, finally, brethren, be strong in the Lord and the strength of his might. Put on the whole armor of God, that you may be able to stand against the wiles of the devil. For our struggle is not against flesh and blood, but against the rulers, against the powers, against the wicked forces of this darkness, against the spiritual forces of this in the heavenly places. And so we're going to have all those combating us. Paul says in 2 Timothy 4:7, I've fought a good fight, I finished my course, I have kept the faith. You got to hang in there. You're going to go through hard times, but you have got to stick it out. And that's where we grow, and that's where it happens. Even in James 1:2-5, it says, my brethren, count it all joy when you fall into diverse or many various types of temptations and trials. For the testing of your faith produces endurance, and let endurance have its perfect work, that you can be perfect and entire. That means complete and entire, wanting nothing. But if you lack wisdom, ask of God, who gives to all men generally. So we'll have to pray. You'll have to pray through, why is this happening? What's going on here and that? But you are going to have trials. And God says, you stick it out. That word perfect actually has the word telaion, and telos is the word to the end. You have to go to the end. You can't quit in the middle. You can't quit in the middle of a game. You can't walk off the field. You have to stay in there. And so you can prepare in all of life that it's not going to be smooth. I want to be honest with you. When I pray for a venture, I would like to see it go smooth. But that's what I pray for. But then I think about it sometimes and I say, God says, it's not always going to be easy. So I say, well, God, just help us get through it. We did that with the building. We had people leave the church because we built this. And it was hard. It took a long time. It took a lot of money, but we hung in there. And that's what you have to do. We've had problems with the city. We had problems with people. You have problems with the dirt. You had problems with engineers. But you keep at it. You keep at every little thing. You just keep on your game. You don't let it knock you off course. I think we ought to be excited that we have before us in the next 3 years laying the foundation of a worldwide ministry. A ministry that we can send people out, a ministry that we can help hundreds and hundreds of orphans, a ministry that we can reclaim the lives of women that have been trapped in human trafficking. And, I've prayed for all these things and for years and years, and you just can't do enough. We're finally going to be able to make a dent. They say throw mud on the wall and see what sticks. We're going to have a bunch of mud sticking on that wall now. And so be praying with us. Get excited about it. See what God can do. I want to remind you that the cool thing is, 3 years from now, we're going to be right here. We're going to be able to be ministering. We're going to be able to do that. And we won't have to be paying for it. And when we get the electric bill, I don't know if somebody, wants to just start paying the electric bill. Somebody says, I'll pay for the mortgage, and we get all you guys to start doing that. That would help out. That would be great. We could release all that other money. But, I don't think too many people want to pay $3,000 electric bill, right? Yeah. And so be praying with me and be willing to step in. We have to come to the time to say, I will be that true disciple of Christ. Amen. We have to step it up and say, I'm ready to follow Jesus, man. And I'm willing to do this, and I want to be involved. Just, you can be involved in the prayer text. You can be involved in the 911 text. You can be involved in the helps text. You can be involved in the giving text. And, if you can't help, you can't help. But one of these times is going to come up, and you'll be the guy that can help. And so I want to encourage you, when we put that stuff out there, get involved with us. Let's pray.